Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life with different perspectives. We talk about life, we talk about love, and we also talk about spirituality. We talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it work in your everyday life? What practices are your go to practices that support you when you need clarity, when you need any kind of support? I also talk about the spiritual toolkit, and we have our own personal spiritual toolkit. And those are the practices that work for us, that we can go in whenever we need and pull something out. With so much going on these days, and we wake up every day and there's something different that we're dealing with, I've needed a lot of spiritual practices, tools myself. And I find myself leaning more into different types of practices and sticking with the ones that I usually do. So tonight I have a very, very special guest, and we're going to be here tonight talking about spirituality and the things that have supported us. You can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta with inspirational messages that can support you through the day as we get to that point where we can find some joy. And I would love to support you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. So let's get to talking to my special guest, Gianni. Come on, Gianni Fasano. Sorry about that, butchering up your name. I was on a roll, and then I was like, I was going to say Giovanni, right? No,
No worries, Rev G.
you know your name.
We know it's Labor Day. We know it's been a long weekend for all of us. So I completely understand. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful to be here.
Yes, and so introduce yourself. It's so funny, Gianni. He's a neuroscientist. He's a chemistry teacher and a coach. So there's so much to who he is. I'm excited for him to talk about
Yeah,
all those things
absolutely.
and how he's making a difference at such a young age. I look at him and say, "Oh, so young, so beautiful," and how he's making a difference. So introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So, hey, everybody. My name is Gianni Fasano. Just like Rev G just said, I am currently a neuroscience student at St. John's, about to graduate in this spring. I am a high school chemistry teacher located out here in Brooklyn. We always represent the continent out here. And on top of that, I am a life coach. In tune with all the spiritual assets, like Rev G touched on, about how we can access joy, how we can really promote people to live the best life that they can, as we have so much time to really explore here.
Cool, cool, cool. So, talk to us. Let's start with a high school science teacher. What that must be like these days, right? Working, and I mean, the science alone is enough for me because as I thought about it, I think back all those years to my chemistry teacher and my physics teacher, but I don't quite remember a lot of it, right? What is it like working with high school students these days, as things are different? And I think you're pretty young yourself, so you may have a different perspective than I would.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, this is my first year teaching high school, which is really, really exciting. I used to
Oh,
teach middle school, which I'm,
okay.
very happy that I moved up to high school this year. I've been really able to connect with high school students. Like you said, I'm pretty young, right? So
Mhm.
kids kind of relate to me. We're almost in like the same, millennial, Gen Z, like right on the cusp
Mhm.
together. So
Mhm.
it's really, really the goal of me becoming this high school teacher was really to give them an experience that I didn't have in high school, where I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, I don't know what your experience, but I sat in that physics class, I sat in that chemistry class, and I was going through the motions
Yeah.
barely, right? Like
Yeah.
barely. I didn't even know what was going on. They just sat up and you had to memorize all these things, lectures and lectures. And so my goal is to really give the kids access to like a higher education in science so that they really understand the world around them. And then on top of that, make it relatable. Like it didn't have to be so drab and boring. It literally is so exciting to really talk about like the chemical reactions that happen in our day-to-day life. You could go
Mm-hmm.
in so many different facets with it. And so I'm really just trying to get students to be aware of like how chemistry just relates to their everyday life. And it's been really successful so far. It's only been a week, but in that first week,
you
in
saw
that first week,
you taught science to middle school
yes,
students. Oh,
I
okay.
did middle school for a while, and that was, middle school. I don't think
Mhm.
anyone I know on the planet had a great middle school experience.
So it's a whole different level now, right?
Absolutely. And so middle school was, I think it was good for me. I think it laid the foundations, but I think over time, I just realized like I need to be with the kids that are, more confident in themselves, maybe a little bit more willing to listen and kind of know just the day-to-day easy things to do, right? Like take out a pencil, take out your notebook. I don't got to remind you, right? But in middle school, you got to tell them every which way what to do, how to do it. And so I
Mhm.
think high school was just more up for me. And it's been great. Like I said, it's only been a week in, but we made a lava lamp this week. I don't know if you know how to make a lava lamp, but I taught the kids how to make a lava lamp, and I
Right.
think they were really just excited to like be able to do some of those things that they could take home to their families or to their brothers or sisters or cousins, and really just show them just the beginnings of chemistry.
That's really cool. I know that you're also a life coach. How do you see incorporating that aspect, I guess, life coach and spirituality with your younger high school students? Or do you see a connect there, right, between the two?
Absolutely. I think that it's so important in the beginning of the year, especially to make relationships with students. And the only way you make relationships is by having powerful conversations, right? When you have powerful conversations that are transformative about what are your values, right? What do you
Mm-hmm.
value, and how do we as a community value some of the same things? If they take an inner look, right? And then how do we respect each other in a space where everyone feels welcome and everyone feels heard and respected. And so like I said, I think that's really where I kind of take into this life coach and spirituality and
Mm-hmm.
bring in how the diversity of each student really adds to the class and makes it even better. So I take days out of my lessons, right? We don't do chemistry every day. It doesn't have to be chemistry every, from the minute you walk in to the minute we walk out. It might be an energizer where we start talking about real life problems or talk about maybe something that happened in the New York Times and
Mm-hmm.
really just dive into like real life stuff so that we can all just realize that we're human first and the
Mm-hmm.
education can come second, right? Like they're humans first. And I feel like that's what kind of like got lost in my education, at least, is that people didn't really care about necessarily who I was, but rather like, can I regurgitate the information that I was presented on paper? And does that mean that I'm smart? Right? Like, did that really mean that I was smart? I don't know. I think that it's a question to be debated.
Do you think that though a would be an across the board new approach? Are you seeing a shift in the way students are being taught? Are you seeing more of that come in? And I think of that because when I think of how we just went through COVID and how we just going to throw them back in the classroom and say, "Let's go," right? What's the shift there? What kind of things have you seen? I don't know that it could be the same. You know,
Yeah, it's definitely not the same. I think that's for everybody, right? Across the
right?
board, we all
Well,
went into
yeah,
COVID.
right,
I feel like we were all in a trance before COVID, where we were all just doing, I got
right.
to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, and nobody questioned anything. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit, and there were a lot more questions that needed to be
Yes.
dived into because there was
Right.
a lot going on that we were kind of turning a blind eye to. And the kids, I would say kids pick up on things, I think, even more in tune than adults. So, kids felt the shift, and kids were the ones that were, I would say, the worst of the lockdown. Their families were in control if they went outside or whether they left, right? And they went through their own type, I would say, of trauma And that's kind of where that neuroscience piece comes in. And I'll talk a little about that later.
Mhm.
But students have definitely had a shift, and they're not just going to sit in your class and listen to you. They're not just going to sit there and, oh, okay, do whatever you say. You need to respect them, and you need to like purposely and intentionally get to know them, because they will not respect you. They will not come to your class. They won't show up, right? Like they just
Mhm.
won't show up, and they don't care necessarily
Mhm.
if they graduate from high school, or they'll just take another class and replace the credits. They don't like they're very quick about it, because if
Yeah.
you're not getting what they want out of it,
Mhm.
they realize their value now. They realize their worth. Like I bring something to this table, and I really need the energy and the respect that I deserve in this space. And
Mhm.
I want to cultivate that more, but I've just realized that shift. Like there's definitely been a shift with that. And of course,
Mhm.
the electronics. They're all very addicted to the technology, as we all are. But I would say that this generation is very locked into like the phone, the computer, always really
Right.
being in connection.
Yeah, that is a whole nother. How do you teach now? How do you structure all of that, given that the technology is what's in everybody's hand? You
Yeah,
know.
so our school has a no phone policy.
Okay.
And so obviously it's a little hard. We give the kids the Chromebooks, right? They get like their own Google Chromebook, which is like a laptop, and you can play different games on it. Kahoot is a big one. There's like Scribble, like IO, it's almost like Pictionary online. And
Mhm.
like those are just things you do just to set the foundation every day, something fun, something energetic. And it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily always have to be on electronics. Like I show them that you can have fun without the electronics. We play games like overrated versus underrated. So kids like look at, different pop culture references, and like they say, is Bad Bunny overrated or underrated right now? Are
Right.
Yeezys overrated or underrated? And it's just
Mhm.
getting them in the conversation of how do you open up a conversation with somebody else? Because I think that's the biggest piece that was lost, is the social connection. Get
Okay.
off the phone, right? And turn and
Mhm.
talk to the person next to you about a topic that everyone is very aware about. And that is the piece that I really want to like drive home this year.
Mhm. That connection, right? Yeah, and this whole new teaching via computer, right? Like reading books and buying books. They're like everything is more like electronic books, right? You don't have to carry home 6 books anymore, right?
And I can't do that. I physically have to pick up a book. I don't know about you, Rev
I
G, but
like picking
I
up books too. I
I
have
need the
so
book. I
many.
can't do
Yeah.
the Kindle. I can't do the online textbook. I gotta
Yeah.
copy, paste, print these. Like, no, I need the physical thing. And I think that's the part that I want kids to still have, even though I know it's not as eco-friendly, right? I still want
Right.
kids to have that feeling of like, what is it like to really just put my face into a book and really like dive
Right.
into it without the electronics, right?
Yeah. As a new, you said you were going to talk about the neuroscientist part. As that part, talk about how that relates to what you're currently doing and where you want to take that.
Yeah, so the neuroscience thing, so let me give you a little preview behind like why I got into it in the first place.
Okay.
Unfortunately, my cousin Danielle, rest in peace her soul, she passed away from ALS, or what doctors think was ALS, because
Mm-hmm.
ALS is usually like the last diagnosis that people will give a patient, or doctors will give a patient if they have those symptoms. So my cousin went to for 4 years. First, she had like a little limp in her leg, and then all of a sudden she lost movement of her legs completely, and then it just slowly took over for 4 years. And she went to multiple doctors across the country, and they all had different answers. Some said ALS, some said muscular dystrophy, someone said that it was the Lyme disease that she caught, and it turned into some genetic disorder that happened afterwards. And so there was no, her death was undetermined. And that really frazzled my family, right? Like, we don't know how she passed, and we don't know, like, are we giving money to ALS? Are we, raising, these different people, raising rather money for different causes that maybe not be linked to Danielle?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into neuroscience to really figure out what happened to Danielle, right? Really what happened, and do the research to see
Mm-hmm.
what could have been possible. But the neuroscience aspect also has other implications, like when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
my teaching, right? I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is that kids need trauma informed teaching right now. Like, what does it mean to go through a trauma? What are the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, right, of the way that you're showing up because of the traumas you've been through? And kids were going through traumas beforehand. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like people we went through traumas, right? Like when I
Right.
was in
Right.
school, nobody talks
Right.
about my traumas, right? Like it was
Mhm.
just like, all right, brush it under the table, rub
Mhm.
the dirt off your shoulder, move on.
Right.
And but kids like need to
This
talk
is
about
like more than that, and I like what you said. Trauma informed teaching, right? That's like a whole nother way of showing up for students in the classroom. And how do we get teachers to that level? Where they are shifting. Everybody's got to shift and change right now.
Absolutely. And it comes, I believe, from understanding. Like I said, like it's
Mm,
really coming to an empathetic standpoint and realize
mm,
that everyone's at different levels, right? Everyone's at
mm,
different levels coming with different trauma, right? Some
mm,
people go through a trauma that other people view as not a trauma, but
mm,
at the end of the day, they're similar symptoms, right? We
mhm,
don't
mhm,
know how everyone experiences these different things. And so that's like the
mhm,
science behind it, right? How can we unlock where the trauma occurred and how they can heal from it intentionally
mm.
so that they can really be their best selves and contribute in a way that they feel satisfied with the life that they live. And that's really where I'm coming with this idea of trauma informed teaching, and coaching, right? And coaching other teachers. Like you said, it's not just me. It has
Mhm,
to be a community. It has
mhm,
to be, through conversations, and it needs to be through education. Teachers doing
mhm,
the education too, right? A lot of times, I don't know if you had these teachers, right, that got tenured, right? After 5 years, 6 years, oh, I'm got this gig for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but I think
I
about
don't care
too.
anymore, right? I got the money
Yeah,
coming in. I don't care.
yeah,
And I think that's the root of the problem. I think
yeah.
that, you got to do the continual learning and you have to
Mm.
be seeking what's needed, especially after a shift like COVID.
Yeah, and I think that also the teachers are traumatized too, right? So, what just the way you look at me, it's like as a teacher, right? The support for them and the whole shift, right?
You don't even want to know about online learning, okay? You don't want to know the Trump, right? Like, you want to help these kids, you want to support these kids. I remember I had one student
Mhm,
when I was teaching fifth grade at the time. And in
mhm,
the back, she's in on the Zoom call and she has her nails, showing me her nails in the camera. She's with her
mhm.
sister doing her nails, right? Like, and you just feel like you're helpless. It was like
Right.
a helplessness feeling of like you feel like the kids are losing out on this education, that they only get one chance, right? You only get one chance to do fifth grade,
Mhm,
and most kids did not get anything out of it, I would argue. And I would say that maybe some, right? Maybe some, but
mhm.
almost all of them went to sixth grade, right? I don't think anyone got held back that year. Everyone just went up to sixth
Okay.
grade. So there's a big content gap. There's a big content gap.
Mhm,
And that's what I'm also trying to address this year. That we can't just move on, same
mhm,
as usual. It has to
mhm,
be some, backward steps to rebuild and restructure
mhm,
what needs to happen in the
mhm.
future.
Yeah, and things like that. Like for me, I would never have thought of any of that, right? Because I'm not in the world. I did think, because I did hear things like the students didn't get the same content or learn, but then I started to think, oh, how do we make up for that, right? And then if it's everybody, then you got a whole generation of them that's on the same level that learn the same thing. You know what I'm saying? That miss this whole part. I don't know, but it's like at what point do we, really step in and address? And I'm not an educator at all in that sense, and I'm sure lots is being done to support students just coming back, going right back into the classroom. And they love it too. So I think that the teachers will probably be more traumatized than the students, right? Being plopped right back into the same situation that we were in before. So I have a lot of respect for teachers, and especially that you are, setting up a place where you look at the student as an individual, not as the way we were. Just read this and go. You're looking at what's going on with them, what's supporting them at this time. And then I think that's a great combination for them.
Yeah.
Um, did you finish talking about the neuroscience? So I saw you are a supporter of the ALS. I think I've seen you out there supporting that. talk about that organization and how people can support it and understand, what they need.
Yes. So after obviously my cousin Danielle, she passed, her husband started a foundation that has actually become the number one non for profit that raises money for ALS specifically. And that is really what has transformed. We have an annual golf outing every year. It's actually upcoming this month on September 21st. I can definitely support and drop a link to it. It's called the Danielle Corain Foundation. And she left behind a 6-year-old daughter at the time. She is my baby, like my niece, right? She's almost like a daughter to me in a way. And she inspires me every day. She really continues to fuel this movement. And just her face alone gives a face to Danielle, even though she's still not with us. And so I think that people can support by raising the money for the ALS, and again, research to come on if it was ALS or not, and really get me into discovering what really happened to Danielle and answering that hard-hitting question.
Mhm. Yes, so look for that, where you can support this whole process. So we earlier when you talked about life coaching, you talked about the spirituality part. Let's shift and talk about your spiritual journey so far, right? I always think about how young you are, right, and say, okay, let's talk about how you grew up and then where you are now in your spiritual journey.
Absolutely. So obviously only 27, but 27 years young out here, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not, yeah, so many things can happen in 27 years, right?
absolutely, that's definitely true. So I grew up on Long Island, in Port Jefferson, out east from the city. And you know, I had my parents, right? My mom came from the Bronx. She grew up in the 1970s in the Bronx. She's Puerto Rican. And then we had my dad. He's Italian. He came from Brooklyn. And they both decided to move out here. But they got divorced after only a year. So, I was a product of divorced parents. And then, my mom got remarried at 4, and we moved out here to Long Island. And I had, I would say, a great, great childhood. I really did. I had a lot of support. I felt like it was a village that raised me, right? Like it wasn't just my family, but a village. And, and that kind of motivates me into what I do today. But overall, I had a great childhood, but I would say that, everything was great until, it hit a wall, right? I got to that 17-year-old, 18-year-old angsty stage.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I was not in control of myself. I was very strict. My parents were very strict in high school, and they really wanted me to do XYZ, maybe become a doctor, right? Like be on this path of like high success. um and they were very strict, and then I got to college, and honestly, I didn't do too well, right? Like I did well academically, but socially and like with the partying and the continual, I really lost myself. I really did for a good amount of time. I would say at least 6 7 years. I really was not the Gianni that I thought I was presenting. I really thought that, oh, because I'm so good at academics and I can present myself so well, that's really all I needed, right? That was the way I could finesse through life.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I was depressed. Honestly, I was continually partying. Honestly, I had a drug overdose at 22, right?
Okay.
And I was not okay. Really, I really didn't know how to handle anxiety. Again, no one taught me how
Mm-hmm.
to deal with any of these things. They were just kind of, mental health was not even consideration at the time, right? It was just like,
That's okay.
show up, do the work, do the job. You got to be
Mm-hmm.
social. You have to keep up with these relationships. You got to keep up with, the sleep, the academics, the money,
Everything.
everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
just thought that that was the way life was going to be for all of my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what spirituality was. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, I got into teaching by,
Mm-hmm.
the grace of God, because it developed such a patience in me. And it's actually what led me to momentum education, which really started to transform my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank momentum all the time for this. But without that, really, that push and shift in my mental awareness and my social awareness, Was I
Mhm.
able to realize and get more aligned to the Gianni that I thought I was being
Mm.
versus and the Gianni that I really am, right?
Oh,
And
great.
those finally got to completely interlock together.
Mhm.
And so again, I always want to just preface that, like, even though I might look like at 27 that I have so many things together, I had a lot of lows to get
Mhm.
to where I am. And
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
a lot of people think that that could have never been me, right? No,
Mm.
Gianni
Yeah.
was
Right. Mhm.
Gianni, right? But I really did go through that. And
Yeah.
even today, you still have to heal from it, right? There are still things we have to heal from
Yeah.
continually. It's not just like,
All of us.
oh, I healed from it once, right?
Right.
It's like a
Because it
continual
comes up. Yeah.
conversation.
I think about that when you were talking about mental health. It's really clear that we clearly don't know enough or even recognize it in people, in ourselves, in others. And so it's one of the things that I'm a big advocate for. Let's get mental health services out there in the forefront so people can know. Like you said, you didn't know you went to drugs or whatever, partying and all that to support the bad feelings you were having, or if you were depressed or what was going on during that time, right? One of the things, as you were talking and you say you were 27-year-old, I was thinking like, in terms of like not really thinking that everybody is the same, but at this point, how can we support 25 to 28-year-olds? What's important to you guys, right? In this, as you look through the world now as it is, what's important and what kind of things you think you guys will need to support you in moving to the next level.
It's for me, it was a lot of meditation. It was a lot of
Mm.
being alone. You
Yeah.
really need to be able to sit with your thoughts and be
Mm.
okay with the things that, life throws at you, and
Mhm.
realize that there's always a lesson. I would say that, you're a fool if you think that you need to avoid the bad experiences, because the bad experiences teach you something, and they teach you how to really access your higher self and what you can really offer. Everyone, I believe, personally has their own superpower. I
Mm.
really believe that. And when you find it and you know it, right? There's an innate feeling that you get when you do something, and you have to explore a little bit. But
Mhm.
you really have to sit with those thoughts and figure out, what is that passion that I have that I can offer this world,
Mhm.
and really just deliver on. And on top of that, for me, it's also just, there is a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of stuff that goes on in everyone's day to day life. And I would say for me, it was also just the physical fitness. It's really making time, just even if it's yoga, even if it's just a short walk, a jog, anything to really center yourself and really just be in your body, right? Be in your body and really set yourself up
Mhm.
to not only have a mental
Mhm.
wellness and
Mhm.
well-being, but a
Mhm.
physical wellness and well-being,
Mhm.
because they're not different. They're all interconnected. If one suffers, they all suffer, right?
Mhm.
If one suffers, they all suffer. And so I would say at 25, that was the beginning. Like you just said, 25 to 28, that's
Mhm.
exactly when I began for me. It was 25 years old when I
Mhm.
really said, let's make a change. Let's really
Mhm.
make a change, an intentional change.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and it was not a linear path, right? It's definitely not
Right.
linear. It's like, oh,
Absolutely.
I
Right.
great. I'm like the Buddha now. I'm completely awakened, third eye, right? Like it's not
Like
like that
I'm
at all.
there, right? It's a
It's not like that.
continuous, right?
It's definitely not
Right.
like that. It's definitely a lot of bumps in the road on the way. But
Mhm.
I would say you have to give yourself grace. There's no perfection. And if you think that there is an idea of perfection, you
Mhm.
need to let it go, because you'll always be disappointed with what happens, right? Because you think that something's going to be perfect, but I would say life or God or universe, whatever you believe in, has
Mhm.
another plan for you.
Mhm.
And that's when you give it up and just let it go and realize that, I can do this, and I'm just here for the journey.
You know, how old are you? 27. Right. In my mind, I think, right, right. It takes people to get to 50, right, and 60 to have this level of conversation, right, about life, this level of understanding that it's about getting in touch with who you are and then being able to think about what your purpose, your passion. It takes people much older. That's why I was like, at first, when we talk about age 27, doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's where you are in your journey. But when I look at age 27 and then I say, wow, you're like a poster 27. How do we get more, because I love the idea of not having to be 40 to understand the transformational journey, to start to work. In the end, as you said, the trauma has already happened. Do we have to wait till you're 30 to address the trauma because it happened already? We can start now. Like you started early, 25, addressing the trauma. How do we get that message across to your generation?
I think the biggest thing is to really advocate for help, right? Like, I think
Mm,
there's been this ingrained American value of do it by yourself, right? The American dream is
mm,
to work hard on yourself and get to this perfect,
mm,
version of yourself, and then I can enjoy all the things that life has to offer. But I
mm,
would argue that it's in the conversations that you have with the people around you, and
mhm,
it's in your support system. It doesn't have to be your family. It
mhm,
doesn't have to be, your friends in this current moment. It might not be anyone. It might be yourself that you need to go to for the advice that you're looking for.
mhm,
And you just need to take that first step and advocate and really take an internal inventory and see what is the next step in my healing. Who is the person or the people that can get me in that spiritual healing? Right?
mhm, mhm,
Is it a community? Is it,
mhm,
my family? Who is it? And
mhm,
how am I going to come to them in
mhm,
an open and honest way?
mhm,
And it is not a cowardice act to ask for support. And I think that is the biggest barrier that our communities are facing, is really just this idea that we cannot go to people for help, or else I'm going to look weak, or else I'm going to
It's
look
also that too when
small.
you people go underground when they are depressed because they don't want to reach out. That came to mind too. The same idea of asking for the help and the support. What you just said to me should be a whole course, right? For kids, right? Like you're in there teaching them science, but it's interesting. That's what came to my mind. How do we address these life issues? Because we talk about a whole new generation. We talk about things are different from the way we grew up, right? What things we could put in place to support the trauma early. I think that's what I'm talking about. So it sounds like a whole place where we can go to support young people in living their best life early without having to be 40. So I love that you have come to this great place at such a young age. What got you on the life coach journey, and talk about how you got to where you are a certified life coach? What made you want to do that? And who will your clients be?
Yes. So I would say personally, the thing that got me, like I already had mentioned, thank you again, Momentum Education.
Oh, momentum. Yeah, I love
Hot
momentum
topic
too.
tonight, right? They're a hot topic tonight.
Yeah.
They really did give me that self-awareness that really built me up to this. And I chose to be a life coach for the simple reason that it offered me the enlightenment that I have today. And I want to pass it forward. I think that if I can just put people or give people the awareness and the path just to follow on their own, or just be that soundboard that they really need when no one's there to listen to them. That was the most impactful thing for me, and it's what drove me to become the coach that I am today. And so the clients that I really work with or try to work with are people that are right at this age, right? I like you said, I don't want people to wait until 40. I don't
Mhm,
want people to wait until 50 to realize that there are traumas that they could have healed from or continually healed from
mhm,
back at 21 or 22 or
mhm,
25, right?
mhm,
And then continue on and create new memories and
mhm,
create more for this world, because this world right now needs so much healing.
Yeah.
And going back to the classroom, right, I'm going to say that you're right. The education system has flaws. We push the idea that academics are the way of the future, and my generation is the proof in the pudding that academics are not everything.
Yeah.
Academics were part of it, right?
Yeah.
They were part of it, but where was that class on how to do my laundry?
Yeah.
Where was that class on how to do my taxes? Where
Exactly.
was the life skills that I really needed to know to set me up for success? And then when I found my interest, boom, there's the academics.
Right.
There's the education I really needed to get me from point A to point B. And instead, we try to drill these students with this idea that you just need to know this. And if you know this, you're going to be ready for the world. And I think it's a false message that we're sending. And I think education is a place where there needs to be some great reflection for the upcoming generations.
You have the question is, how do you advocate for yourself in the wake of such barriers such as peer pressure? And you're in the schools, right? And I think that's a great question too, to address how that happens. How.
100%. I'm gonna say again with the peer pressure. I would say at 27, right? Everybody I know is going out on the weekends. They're
Mhm.
drinking, right? They're going to brunch. They're partying, right? And that's okay, right? I think there's a time and place, and I think there's definitely points where people feel if you are up to it, right? Or you know that it's something that maybe serves you to let loose, or it's something that you enjoy, then absolutely do what you need to do. But I think you need to be so firm in yourself and realize when to say no, right? A
Mhm.
lot of times I've taken a lot of time to actually just say no to people, even though I feel sometimes guilty, right? I feel
Mhm.
guilty when all of a sudden my friend hits me up and I haven't seen them in so long. It happened to me this weekend. My friend was from Boston coming to New York. She was like, "Oh, please, I'm here. Like, I really want to see you and let's go out in New York." And I was out here with my family. And I had to be like, "Listen, I would love to be with you. Let's plan something in the future. And I know we can. Let's make a date to connect. But right now, I already have my plans, and I'm okay with these plans, right? I'm
Mhm.
more than happy to be in the presence of my family or the people that I love. And so that is really how it's just the saying no, and realizing that saying no is a great way to say yes sometimes to yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a huge message, and as I say, getting that across to young people, right? Getting that match, and I just like love momentum because if you are a product of momentum. They have just an excellent job, right, in the way that you've taken on. I say you get what you put into it. So momentum has been great for me too because you take the information and then you use it and you work it in your life. So it's not like some magic wand that's there. You have to take that information, work with it, and change your own life. So I love that there's a community where that can happen. That's how I like to promote momentum as a community and a group of people that can support you. And you talk about asking for the help. That's one of the things that we learn there, being willing to ask for the help.
Absolutely. And again, I'm just going to say back on the trying to convey that to younger people.
Yeah.
I think the one of the steps is really just letting go a little bit of the social media and the press and the things that go on, with the way that it literally shifts your perception of the world by being
Mm.
so ingrained in Instagram and Facebook, and thinking like, you know, that just promoting, all like sex sells, right? Like
Mhm.
all the songs that we listen to are about
Yeah.
getting drunk, getting wasted,
Yeah. Sex,
all,
sex,
and
right.
it completely forms this idea that that is what living is.
At this
This is what
point.
I need to look like. This is how I need to act.
Yeah.
That is really, that I would say is the biggest part about me, at least reshaping the way that I form my perspective, was deleting the apps, living
Mm.
life, being present in the moment to see how abundance really just shows up in our life on a day-to-day basis. I am grateful for everything that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for the good and the bad experiences that I've been a part of. And I think that with at least a little bit more presence and a little bit more release of
Mm-hmm.
things like social media or things, like, even the TV or the news,
Yeah.
really can help someone really get clear on what their purpose here on earth is.
Yeah, and you're just like letting go, and I'm just sitting here going, "Oh Lord, how do we do that, right? How do we go backwards and let go of the social media and let it go? What are you saying? What would be that campaign? Everybody put it down, and I know I just recently read an article about how much time you could save if you weren't on Facebook so many hours or on Instagram. Oh my God. And so then I started doing this practice of putting my phone down, right? Put it down, right? And just see how long. And my husband's funny. Let's see how long you'll let it sit down, right? But you do everything on the phone. You pay the bills, you watch the movies, you call the people, you watch the social media, you do everything, right? You do the texting back and forth. So it becomes somewhat it becomes a habit that you're always there. So it takes something to pull back from that, right? And then do something. I like reading books and touching books, so there's more time. And I have so many books that I keep ordering. Touch the books and read them, right? That would save some of the time with being on the phone in the head. So it just comes up for me. How do we shift that?
I think there are also, I do have, like, obviously I'm talking a little smack about the social media. There are benefits. I would
No,
say there
I know,
definitely
I know,
are benefits of, like you
but
said, there is connection, right? We're here on tonight
but
because of technology and the social
exactly,
media. That's the
right,
only way that this was created tonight, right? Is
yeah,
because of those things. So there are definite benefits. It's the
exactly.
way and how long you're utilizing it. I think the biggest study that I read that was very on point that I realize sometimes in myself is like this idea of ADHD almost, where, I need instant gratification or I can
Mm,
only keep my interest in something for 7 seconds, right?
mm,
I literally read a caption and I look at a picture and boom, my 70 seconds done. Now it's the
right,
next one, right?
right,
And so that is the training of, like, that you have to do yourself, right? Is building that stamina to keeping attention for things that you are really passionate about. And,
yeah,
again, there is a time, there is a place, you can set some time. There are things on your phone all the time to
mm,
put, only X amount of screen time in a day. There are
yeah,
parameters, there are steps you can definitely take. And once you do take those steps, it can really open up a whole new world for people.
yes, you really, really do. And I just recently started to just like put it down, consciously put it down, because the always having it just became a part of what I do. I wanted you to talk about when we met and you told me about the pit, your world of comedy, stand up comedian, improv, I saw some great pictures of you. So let's talk about your extracurricular.
Yes. So you know me. I got the jokes.
Right.
Because you can't take life too seriously. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Right.
really, you got to crack jokes here and there. I really do. Again, it's improv for me. It's really just
Mhm.
improvisation.
Right.
Making fun in the moment.
Yeah.
Not an intentional fun, right? I think there
Hmm.
used to be a comedic thing of making fun of other people for fun, and
Hmm.
that's shifted to, like, let's make fun of, like, the day-to-day things that are kind of like hilarious that we do,
Right.
right? Like,
Exactly.
hilarious things that we do.
Hmm.
I saw this picture one time of, like, what it looks like for Americans to, like, literally, if you took pictures of Americans on a day-to-day basis, it's just us sitting in front of, like, a TV for, like,
Hmm.
hours. Just like if you took away the screen, right? It's literally just us sitting on the couch for hours.
Hmm.
It's sitting on the phone for hours.
Hmm.
And we just make fun of, like, the day-to-day rituals that we have,
Hmm.
that aren't really necessary, but, like, we've already kind of been indoctrinated in doing. So
Yeah.
I include, like, humor in everything I do. I actually plan jokes into my lessons and see
Yeah.
if the puns will hit, just
Hmm.
because I think kids will get a kick out of it, even if they don't think it's funny. It's just funny for me. Um,
Hmm.
and I would say the modeling. So the modeling, I really love taking great pictures
Mhm.
I really haven't had so much time to do it recently. Same thing I would say with the comedy. I love improv. I want to get back into it. I think we did it during COVID, right? We were doing it
Yeah,
online. We were
yeah,
supporting, the comedic and the theater, community during that time where it looked pretty abysmal for that community, right?
yeah. Right.
No,
It
I'm
was a good thing
sorry.
for me during COVID because I was always busy doing things. So that really supported me through COVID to take the classes and just be in community with people. So that was a good call that you gave me to do that. So I was excited for that.
And they
Um,
told me you were a huge comedian on there too. They were like, they're gonna put you on the stage now that COVID's over. I think we got to take a class together again. I think now
yeah,
we can do it
we
in
have to. I
person.
haven't been. Yeah, I just think that I'm just now rolling out whether COVID is over or not. I went all that time without getting COVID and then get COVID at the end of COVID. That was crazy for me, right? And so I'm still like, but so you go on, the world goes on, you try to figure out how to live. I wake up, I do my meditation, I ask for guidance, and I just go out there in the world and live my best life. But yeah, I haven't been out to like being off people and all that too
I mean,
much.
it's not just your typical city either. We're in New York.
Right.
In New York City, we're all on top of each other.
I
It's a little,
know,
it's a
right?
little close
I think
quarters.
I'm the only one on the street with a mask on, right? I feel like that, right? I feel like that, but then I'm okay. I'm okay with it because it's like you get to choose, right? I get to say I've gotten used to wearing this mask, so I get to wear it some more, right? But
Listen, rock it. You better put a pattern on it. You better show people, hey, like
right,
I'm still
right, make
rocking
it
it.
look
And I'm
good,
gonna make it fashion, please.
right? Yeah, so that's just like living in New York City. Let's shift a little bit so that you can share some of the things that you think are important, for people your age. What tips would you give? Because my whole thing is how are we going to get people to the space that you're in, right? And whatever medium we could use, even if it's like this is a medium and then we take from this and we share it with others, what kind of things do you think would be important to share?
So my first tip I would have to say is one accepting, and I got this from my best friend, my co-partner, Renata.
Oh, okay.
But, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the last thing to grow on the tree is the fruit, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
accepting that there's going to be a process in what you do, right? You're not going to necessarily get that instant gratification for what you're looking for out of life. But the thing you can do is just start. What is that thing that you've always wanted to do that you told yourself you couldn't do because you were too this, you were too that, you're too busy, you don't have enough time? It's just the first step, even if it's signing up for that class, even if it's just taking some time to write down all your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
just taking that first step is really where the transformation begins for me. And something that I would advise is just taking that first step. And the second step is don't take life too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We all listen, we all go into the same place. It's not a race. So I don't know, like there's no rush, right? It's going to happen.
People say that all the time, and it's like, oh, what does that mean, right? And I get it, right? Like, joke at yourself, but life is serious. Don't you know it, right? Who
Right?
told
Like
you life wasn't serious, right?
right? Like it's not that serious. Like it's really you can enjoy it at any point in time, right? I think one of the best phrases one of my friends told me when I did AmeriCorps, this
Mm,
amazing program that the federal government puts out. They pay you to go across the country and do service for different communities across the country. Amazing. And
right.
I did this for a year, and one of my mentors in that said, "Who's gonna pay your debt when you're dead?
Mm,
Not you.
right.
So why are you scared about the money? Why are you
Mm,
taking life so seriously? Why don't you take that risk-taking step in whatever direction you think your life needs to go and have faith that it's
Mm,
going to work out the way
mm,
it was supposed to work out from day one, right? It was
mm,
always going to be a plan. And you don't know what the plan is, but as long as you take those intentional steps, it
mhm,
will change your life.
mhm. And you said the main word, a good word, was intentional. And taking the first intentional step. You know how we talk about setting those intentions and then having them show up, right? But yeah, that was number two. Do you have another one? That's great.
Yeah, I would say three
Mm-hmm.
is love often, love
Mm,
yourself
mm,
first.
mhm,
Everything about yourself,
mhm,
everything that other people have told you you're not, you are, right? Like
mm,
you are the smartest in the room. You
mm,
are the most powerful in the room. You
mhm,
can do anything that you really want to do if you just start with the belief that you can and accept that
mhm,
it's not going to you and I'm going to say the outward part of love too. I just want to add to that is love the people around you because you never know when their time is up. That was
mhm,
the biggest lesson I learned in 2021. I told you I
mhm,
lost my cousin Danielle, but I also lost my father and my grandmother. So I lost
mhm,
2 deaths in a year, right?
mhm,
And I wasn't ready for that.
mhm,
But I've come to a peace with it because I
mhm,
know personally that they're with me.
mhm,
I see it. I see the signs. I intentionally look for the signs and be like,
mhm,
if I'm looking for my nonna, if I'm looking for my dad, I
mhm,
see them. I see
mhm,
just the little things that tell me, okay, Gianni, you're on the right track.
mhm,
Going.
mhm,
And it makes me love the people around me more. It makes me be in family more. It makes me be with the people I care about more and
mhm,
not the people that maybe I thought were my friends, right? Or the people that I thought were really about me. Just put your phone down and see who texts you after a little bit, right? Don't
mhm,
keep reaching out to everybody because not everybody making the time for you, right? You got to also vet who's really in there and down with you for the cause.
And I find too, when you start to spend more time with yourself, you have less time to spend out there with others and expect others. And then you start to really appreciate the time that you spend with yourself.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that's one of the important things. One of the questions that I ask all of my guests is to talk about your top three spiritual practices. Because as we go through, you had your three deaths. Something pulled you through. I had like 10 people die in the past 2 years, right? And so I had to use a lot of spiritual practices. And so I always say, everything that I learned in Christianity and spirituality, I had to start believing all of that, right? Running up on death after death, it really causes you to look at what are your beliefs and what do you believe about life and living and what's going on. So it was a trying 2 years, right? So every practice I had to kind of use. What are your top three?
so yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's a really important one. I think the first one for me that I automatically have to do every week is definitely have fun. Like number one every week is have fun. If that's a video game for me, if
Mm-hmm,
it's watching a movie with my roommate,
mm-hmm,
if it's going on a date, with
mm-hmm,
my significant other,
mm-hmm,
whatever it is, I just need to make that one intentional having fun each week, and it
mm-hmm,
makes life so much more worth it, right? Like it's
mm-hmm,
just the one having fun and figure out what fun means to you, right? Because fun is
mm-hmm,
different for everybody. That's fun for me.
mm-hmm,
Um, Two is I have to write down every week. I have a lot going on in my brain. I don't know if anybody else does. I have a lot of thoughts coming through every day. I don't know who's trying to contact me, in the spirituality realm, but I have to write down the most significant things that I want to accomplish that week. I have to, again, it's the setting of intentions. For me, it's I have to write it down, pencil to paper, and really just look at it, read it, digest it, and then give myself, I would say the third one is give yourself the praise for what you did accomplish that week. because
Mm-hmm.
things might change. You might set an intention, and then by the end of the week, maybe you only got one of those intentions done out of the 20 that you wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
maybe it wasn't meant to be, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
at least I got that one done and I get to praise that. And then I get to see how I can grow or shift the next week to maybe get more done that I know is really on my heart to do. And so I would say it's the one is have fun, two, write down your intention, and three, give yourself the praise that you deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that because I know there was this whole book called "Write It Down, Make It Happen." And when you write it down, it's like setting that intention, right? When you write it down, you become clear about what you want. And that's what talk about when we talk about setting intentions and writing it down. And you'll write things down and they'll just happen. I know I lived the last momentum event I went to. I wrote down these three things and I hadn't looked at them in a while, right? But I went back and I was like, oh my God, they're happening. It happens, you know? And that's not to say that you have to put some action behind it, but you don't have to like chase it. And that's one of the things that I always want to talk about is grace and ease, right? Because as you said, we've been taught so many things and we've been taught to do this race for it. We've been taught you have to run for it and race to get to the end because there's a goal, there's a challenge, there's something you got to go for. So you better put everything in there 100% and run for it, right? But we don't have to exert so much energy in getting what we want in our lives, right?
Literally, going to chemistry, right? There's literally a law called the law of least resistance. And
Right.
it literally says that the best way, right, for an electronic circuit to go is through the
Right.
least
Least
resistance.
resistance, right.
And that's
Exactly.
what you need to be following. If it's getting a little too hard, then you're not going the right way.
Right, right. I said, if it's hard, I don't need to be doing that, right? If it's hard all the time, that's been a motto of mine for a long, long time. If it's hard, I don't think I need to be doing it. And that's as you said, if it's hard, you're going the wrong way, right? The path of least resistance, right? And that's it. I mean, sometimes we take the hard way, when it's not necessary to do that. And that's why I was like, I was on that treadwheel. You got to do this. You got to get these degrees. You got to go to this school. You got to get this job. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to have this. You got to have all that, right? Then you get all of that and you do all of that and you still like, what, right? Because you
Right?
haven't
It's the
gone
rat
through
race. The rat race is what I call it,
right.
right? You're on the wheel, and then, but the thing
Yeah.
is, you're not going anywhere, right? You're
Yeah.
circling on the wheel, and you're not going anywhere.
Until you can like find yourself. As you said, go within, find out who you are, what you're passionate about, and then work towards having that manifest in your life. So
Couldn't say
I
it better.
am happy that you were able to join me. I love it when I can get my young people here talking about what's going on and how we can support and just what are some of the things that's needed for us for everybody to live their best life, and how we can support that.
It's been an absolute blessing. I'm so thankful that you invited me here on the show. It has
Mhm.
really just been a great conversation, as I knew it would be. Um,
Yes.
you just saying in this vision of your show is an inspiration to me. I see what you post all the time. I see that you're always on your show every single Monday. I see that there's somebody new, and it,
Mhm.
it continues to inspire me. So your inspiration is giving light to me to inspire myself to keep doing the things that I do. So I really am just really grateful and humble for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Rev G.
Thank you for joining me, and I'll be in touch.
Of course.
All
All
right.
love.
So I love you. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night, WEMS Radio Live. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. So you can join us for conversations with guests from all walks of life, and we're sharing, hoping that we can support you in living your best life. You can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta, supporting you with daily affirmations and things to just help make life feel better for you. I'll see you again next week right here, WEMS Radio Live. Have a special, special week.